Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
I welcome you in 12th lecture regarding technology transfer through strategic alliance and joint venture. I am discussing with you the module called joint venture agreement, and in this particular talk, more specifically I'll speak on the governance issue in joint venture agreement and what are the matter relating to joint venture governance you should incorporate in the agreement itself. So, the first of all, we should talk about the governance structure of the joint venture, and while doing so, it depends on type of the business form you have selected. Now, if you have selected the company, then in that case you will have a board of director. If you are selected the partnership, then it will be a managing partners, or if you are choosing other forms like association of the persons, or if it is a society or a cooperative, then in that case there will be other name with which we will call. So, whatever the name we call, we can for our convenience call that particular governance structure as management board. So, even if you are having a soft alliance or your joint venture is not really incorporating any business form, or which I have discussed with you, joint venture without equity participation, which is still in the form of an agreement relating to sharing of market or technology transfer or product development, so much so forth, then in that case also you can have a management board, and in that particular board there is a people participate from both the venturers, or if there is a multiple venturers, all those particular venturers will send the number of people in that particular management board. Now, while you are structure your governance, you should also take care of some of the issues like the extent of authority which you wanted to give to this particular management, and that has to clearly specify into the venture agreement. And then if you have to talk about the prescribed level of accountability for the joint venture management. You need to talk about what is the removal policy which will have relating to senior officers, chief executive officer. Will the joint venture board or the management board will have that particular authority to do so. You need to talk about if the joint venture partner having a minority stake, then in that case what kind of protection should be provided to this particular minority stake, or over the years for a reason they are become a minority stakeholder in the joint venture, then in that case what kind of a protection you need to extend. Because if you remember in my last lecture I have said that it might so happen that because of the regulatory changes the joint venture partner became a minority ventures because they need to dilute their stake. So, in those circumstances what type of protection you are extending to your venture partner that need to be specified into the governance document or the matter of the governance. You need to talk about the process relating to development of the business plan, updating of the budgets, or development of the budgets. All this particular thing you need to specifically mention into the plan of governance or governance plan, and it should specifically take play, inserted into the joint venture agreement itself. Next important thing is relating to the management board, and in the management board you need to talk about the proportional representation in the board and what kind of formula you are developing for that, because please remember that generally it depends on type of organizations you have incorporated as a joint venture, consequence of the joint venture. If you are form a company, or if you have incorporated a company either public limited or private limited, then in that circumstances you need to govern by the Companies Act. At the same time, if the SEBI has prescribed some kind of a guideline relating to that, you need to govern by that. So, in those particular circumstances you have really a limited option before you, that what should be the structure of that particular board, because it is depend on type of shareholding you are having or type of holding you are having into that particular organization itself. But if it is a partnership or any other form you have chosen, then in that case you can decide that what should be the structure of the management board. You might have a 50-50 management board, that means 50% of the people come from one venturer and 50% of the people come from another venturer, and in those particular circumstances there is every possibility that there is a deadlock scenario. So, you need to give a specific right to the chairman that how he can cast his vote in the scenario of a deadlock. Then you need to talk about the particular qualification or provision for the member of the management board, if you want to specify so. Then further you need to talk about removal and replacement of the members of the management board. Sometimes you need to specify that how many times and what kind of notice requirement management board has for meeting, or how many times they should meet in the year. Now, please remember, if it is a company, then again you need to govern by the statutory provision, because Companies Act specifies that the board need to meet at least 4 times in the years. It can be more than that also, but this is not so in case of other form of organization, if it is a partnership or any other form. So, in sometimes you will find that how many times the management board required to meet, that is specified by the statute or governed by the statute, but in some cases it is not. But even if it is specified by the statute, you might have your own governance rule, you might even specify more number of meeting by this particular management board, or you might talk about the number of subcommittee which the management board should have and how many times they are going to meet, so that they can really aware about what is happening within this particular venture itself. Now, you should specify about the quorum, you should specify about alternate members, alternate members in that particular board. Like many of the time you will find in the management board there might be a foreign directors, because if your partners is a foreign partner, then he will send his own director in the board, and most of the time these particular foreign directors are not available. So, there should be some alternative person who will fill up his space, and he will act on behalf of that particular foreign director, and that is known as alternate director. And if you want to choose alternate director, then you should create a provision within your constitutional document or the management document, and you can also decide about what should be the procedure relating to appointment of this alternate director. Now, another important thing is that who should given a right to call the meeting. That is one of the issues you should incorporate it within the governance document of a joint venture agreement, because if it is a particular organization like a company, then statute prescribes that who can call the meeting. But in other cases, if it is a partnership or other form, or even if it is simply an agreement which I have talked about, then in that case you should specify that who will have a right to call the meeting of the management board. Now, you should also specify that in what circumstances management board need to meet in person, and in what circumstances the management board can take the decision without meeting in person. So, when the teleconferencing or video conferencing can be used for the purpose of the meeting, or even how the management board can take the decision by circulating the minutes and signing that particular document. So, you can specify the circumstances when it can be it can be done. Now, you should talk about the power and the duties of the management board, and you can specify that in certain matter the management board require approval, and in which matter management board has to have a anonymity in the decision making. And ultimately, you need to talk about that what decision to be taken by this management board and what decision need to be referred to the venturers. So, this is always good to mention in this governance document, but at the same time let me again draw your attention that some of the power depending on the form of business you have chosen, right. If you have taken the form of a company, some of this power is given specifically to the board of directors, but you can have some additional provisions in AOA of the company or article of association of the company, and there you can have a different benchmarking. But whatever the circumstances is, please remember that you cannot insert something in a way which will going to demean the provision of the statute. Now, let me talk with you relating to the meeting of the co-venturers, and herein, as I have discussed in case of the management board, you need to detail out many things like the procedure of co-venture meeting, the notice requirement, then quorum for a valid meeting, then who can call the meeting, then what are the cases the co-venturer need to meet in person, in what are the cases they can even take the decision without meeting in person. Then you need to talk about the co-venturer requirement of approval of majority. In some of the cases you need if there is a more than or two co-venturers, then you need to have a majority decision to take majority decision on particular matter. Maybe it might be relating to starting of a new business, it might be relating to the change of business plan, or it might be relating to the annual budget, change of the annual budget, so much so forth. So, you whatever it may, you should mention it in your joint venture agreement. Now, you should also give clear or create a clear provision relating to the chairman's power in case of tie in the meeting. That means, if there is a deadlock scenario, then how the chairman can play a role and come out of that particular deadlock scenario. Now, further you need to talk about the the management who are basically participate in day to day operation of the business. So, you are basically talking about the management which is below the board or below the apex body level. So, or which is below the management board which we are talking about. So, whatever the organization you choose, again it is depending on type of management which you might constitute, but nevertheless you need to specify the provision relating to this particular management. Now, this management may include the chief operating officer, then it might include the chief executive officer, it can be the general manager or other person responsible for day to day operation of the joint venture. You might have a chief financial officers, you might have one or two co-venturers who might have a right to nominate these key managerial personnel, and certain venturer could have a right to nominate certain offices. Now, most of the time what we found that if you have a foreign partner or if you are even having a domestic partner, then in that case some of the people are sent by the venturers into this new joint venture, and these people are either veteran in that particular venture organization or very trusted, because whenever these new ventures start, they want to have sort of control over this particular venture, and that is the reason. If that way you want to acquire the people or select the people, you should have a provision in place. Now, you can have a right to rotate the nomination, like if you the venturers might decide amongst themselves that how many years chief executive officers will continue, which is nominated by a particular partner, and then there is another partner who might nominate the chief executive officers, or in that case chief financial officers. So, there can be a rotation of these particular key personnel, and it might be nominated by the venturers in that particular venture. So, you can also talk about the limit of authority of these particular officers and what are the signing authority in what are the matters. So, what is that important thing is that there should be a clear allocation of the tasks or the decision making authority between the management board, between the venturers, and between these management. So, there should not be any kind of a conflict, and if there is a major decision, then in that major policy decision, then in that case it might have a particular route to follow. It might go from management to management board, and then management board to venturers for taking this particular decision. So, whatever the procedure you wanted to have within this joint venture organization, you need to specify that into this particular joint venture agreement. Now, another important thing for success of a joint venture agreement is to have access of periodical information about the different issues. It might be relating to the financial matter, it might be relating to the other reporting requirement, it might be relating to the accessing of the books which is statutorily required to be kept by the joint venture organization, and it might be relating to access of information when the venture stakes comes down. So, whatever the provision you wanted to develop relating to the access of information, you should specify it very clearly. Now, let me draw your attention, if this is a company, I mean if joint venture lead to a formation of the company, then in that case again the statute prescribe in what circumstances the member has a right to access what kind of information. Again, if it is a partnership, then you will find this right also specified in the statute itself. This is also applicable in case of the society as well as the cooperatives. But in other circumstances, you might specify these condition, or even if the statute specifies some conditions, you might have additional condition relating to this particular thing. Now, important thing is that in some circumstances, you might like to debar some of your partner not to access the information if they have diluted the stake, because you might not like to have an interference or a specific information about the organization by your partner who has diluted the stake. So, in those particular circumstances, clear provisions should be identified or developed relating to the stakeholder, relating to the partner who has diluted the stake, relating to accessing of information. Now, I am going to talk with you a long list where you need to have a consent for the action which you want to take, and this particular consent level might be lied with the different constituent of the joint venture or organization. I have mentioned about this particular constituent in this particular lecture, but nevertheless, let me remind you once again. It might be the venturer themselves. Second is it can be the management board, and third is the management. So, there should be some provision relating to approval of the annual business plan and the budget, and if you wanted to change this annual business plan and budget, then how you should go and to whom you should go for this change of approval. Then if you are entering into a transaction outside the ordinary course of business, then who should be the authority and who has authority to approve that particular transaction. Most of the time you will find this transaction right is given to the management board, and with the consent of the management board, the management can go ahead with this regular transaction. But if the transaction which might change the business plan, then in that case you might need to elevate that particular approval to the level of the venturers. So, the venturers might need to reconsider or need to consider those particular approval. Now, if there is a change of name, who is going to have the authority? If there is a change in scope of business, who should have the authority relating to that? And then if you are making the investment outside the scope of business in excess of specified threshold, unless contemplated in the annual business, then who should going to give the permission? And then if you are incorporating a further subsidiary for better business, or to expanding the business, or to entering into a new domain of business, then who has authority to give the permission, you need to discuss about. Now, there might be situation where you need to admit a co-venturer, new co-venturer, and if that is so, then what are the procedure, what are the formalities, and who is the appropriate authority to give the permission, you need to lay down that particular provisions. In most of the time, you will find if there is a admission of the new co-venturers, then the permission should come from all the venturers. That means, if there is a 3 or 4 venturer already exist, then they have to decide amongst themselves will they allow the new venturers to come, because it is always advisable to have that particular provision within your joint venture agreement, because you are not sure that how the business will take shape down the line 5 years or maybe in the futures. So, you might require a new expertise, you might require to enter in a new domain, or within the business segment there is a new domain is developing which you require to address. Let me give you example, like you are in automobile business and then you find that that the traditional fuel is sinking, or people are not interested to use the traditional fuel. People are more interested in hybrid fuel or a vehicle which is using the hybrid fuel. So, you might require to get new partners or new venturers who has expertise in the battery technology, or who can provide you the upgradation of your technology for upgradation of your vehicle. So, that is what you should have a flexibility or openness for a new person to enter into your venture. Then if there is any transfer of ownership interest, then you need to discuss that particular thing, because I have talked with you relating to transfer of ownership when we are talking about diluting of stake. And if there is anything relating to incurring the debt or granting the security or change in business plan, then you need to have a process in place. If you wanted to do a payment of the dividends or distribution or return of the capital, except as it is enter into a joint venture agreement, then in that case you should have a proper mechanism in the place that who can approve this kind of move. And if there is a change in management board or establishment or change in the committee or appointment or removal of the officers, then in that case who is the competent authority and what is the procedure one should follow for this matter. Now, if the matter is relating to the insolvency, then who has a appropriate authority? Then if it is a matter relating to the capital expenditure which is not contemplated in the annual business, then how you should take the approval and who is the approving authority. Then if there is a new acquisition or new investment plan, then how you should go ahead with what is the what is prohibited within this particular plan, and what is allowed subject to financial threshold. All you need to detail out, and for that matter even you should tell that who has the power to give the consent in these particular cases. But one thing I like to tell you for your better managing the business venture, you should not rely more on your venturers or the consent from the venturers, because if you give more power to the venturers, then it might your joint venture might suffer. So, it is always advisable that if it is not very crucial, if the matter is not very crucial and it is not going to change your business structure, you should keep this particular power with your management board. There are further list here, and you will going to find many things which I have listed it here, but I will just speak on some of the issues, like if there is a disposal of the assets, then what are the procedure you should follow, or if there is a creation of subsidiaries, then what are the matter and how you should go ahead for this particular thing, or if there is a change in the charter or organization document, what are the process by which you should comply this particular thing. Now, what I will suggest you that you should create your joint venture agreement in such a manner which are having a flexible structure, because what you have contemplate in the beginning of the joint venture, you might not have the same circumstances over running of this particular joint venture. So, you should have a adequate flexibility built in within the joint venture agreement. So, whenever it is required, you can modify, change, upgrade whatever you facilitate. Like in my previous lecture, I have told you that you might have a one umbrella agreement, and within that umbrella agreement there can be several issues, like whatever I am discussing with you, the governance issues, or whatever I have talked about, other formalities in my previous lecture, it may come as a subordinate agreement within that particular umbrella agreement. And you can have a further agreement relating to shareholding, share transfer, technology transfer, so that if there is any change in a particular matter, then you can simply change that particular document without disturbing the entire thing. So, structuring the joint venture agreement is one of the very important strategy which you need to take while you are signing the joint venture agreement, or when you are constituting the joint venture agreement. Similarly, in your joint venture agreement, you should have provisions relating to the corporate reorganization, issues of the shares. If you want to go for a right issues, if you wanted to go for public offering, then these particular provisions should mention, and in what circumstances and in what condition you should go ahead with this, and who is approving authority for that particular things. Now, the another two issue I wanted to draw your attention is relating to the auditor and the managing and the management's liability. Now, auditors, who will be the auditors, and how you can change the auditing firm is a very contentious issues in today's world. Now, if you are a company, then in that case there is a detailed procedure has been laid down under the Companies Act relating to who can be appointed as an auditor, and what kind of audit firm and how many days a particular audit firm can audit a particular company. Now, this is not so in case of other firms, but my advice will be that you should have a lot of transparency relating to the auditing and financial process, because that gives you a credibility in front of other people in the market. So, you should have a process in place. You should also define that who has the authority to take the decision in this particular matter. Similarly, you need to look into that what kind of regulatory structure is prevalent, which is imposing the liability on the directors, and what kind of liability it is imposing, and in those particular circumstances what kind of a backup plan in case of imposition of the liability. Nowadays, you will find that management generally take the insurance against their liability, because it is quite a sum whenever liability is thrown, or whenever liability is imposed on the directors, and sometimes it might the liability even extend to their personal property or personal assets. So, you might also consider that the insurance liability regime, as well as what kind of insurance one should take or underwriting one should take for the protection of the liability. And at the same time, if the liability is protection of liability is taken, who is going to cover the cost for that particular insurance? Like as I told you that management may come from the venturers, then in that case should the venturer will going to take care of the insurance coverage of the managers, or the joint venture organization is going to take care of cost of insurance for the managers. So, all these things you need to detail out, and you need to also specify that who has a right to take a call on those particular issues if it need to be decided. Thank you.